I remember, and I'm going to reference this note so I don't misquote it. In an article in 2002, they defined, and I know we're distinguishing between general toughness and mental toughness, and I'll go back to that, but they had talked about mental toughness was having the natural or developed psychological edge, which, you know, defining a term with another ambiguous term is always tricky, that enables you to generally cope better than your opponents with the many demands, competition, training lifestyle that sport places on a performer, and specifically be more consistent and better than your opponents and remaining determined, focused, confident, in control under pressure. And it's like, what? You know, and so I like the fact what you reference. It's clean, it's tight. I can think of it from the time when I boxed, right? And I think that's a great example because most people that don't understand combat sport think it's violent and just people out there throwing. No, like there's a reason they said, you know, Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the nose. When you're boxing, you have to think, you still have to react. Is that a feint? Do I counter? What punch do I throw? I have to control my breathing. And mind you got a mouth guard in. It's decision-making under fatigue, under duress. And you're out there. It's like there's no one else to blame. It's you and that person. In football, you can say, they missed a block. In the corporate world, you can say, oh, Betty didn't do this, or somebody didn't communicate. Ron didn't hand off the email. But there has to be a certain aspect about this that comes down to the individual, right? I mean, there has to be some level of accountability for somebody to say, like I'll frame it this way. There are plenty of coaches that I know that they would say, yeah, I do tough things. I get under the bar, I put load on myself, or, you know, there's runners that push their mileage or try to do an ultra or whatever. But Steve, where I need you to help me is, I don't know that I view, if you're somebody that already likes to exercise or lift or do this, like, is it toughness if you're constantly doing those things in your own context, the context that you like? Or is it toughness if you routinely do things outside of that context? You know what I mean? And diversify that portfolio a bit. Does that make sense?
It does. And here's what I'll say to that is that when you do things that you're comfortable with, even if they bring about pain, discomfort, etc., you already know how to navigate them.
Love that. Yeah.
If I go down to the track and someone says, go run a mile, I've got decades of experience to figure out, even if I'm not in the best shape, how to navigate that. So I really think that it's about that toolkit that you have. And the way to develop and expand that is to diversify your experiences, is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone in areas or tasks that you don't quite have the skill set where, you know, hey, when I experience this stress or uncertainty, I then do X, Y, or Z. You need to be put in situations where, you know, you don't know. And actually, some of the runners that I worked with, elite runners, would always tell me, is said, Steve, every once in a while, we need to do something where it puts me in a bad place.
Love that. Yeah, you have. What did they define as a bad place, though?
So they would say a bad place is something that is like, I'm not familiar with, that I don't necessarily know how to get out of.
They got to improvise.
They've got to improvise. They've got to figure out. One of the runners put it like this is, I've got to just start going through all the tools I got in my head and trying them and not sure what one works because I don't know. I haven't been in this situation. And that's where I think toughness is about doing hard things, but it's about developing that toolkit. And the best way to develop that toolkit is often doing things that you're not comfortable or familiar with.
And I want to make sure, and I clarify here, you know, the way I interpret some of what I've read in your upcoming book is this doesn't even have to be physical. Right. And the reason I ask that is to contextualize things for our audience. We do a lot of, we have a workshop called the Apprenticeship, stealing from that Hemingway thing, right? We'll never become a master, especially when it comes to communication and leadership. And we rely heavily on improv, role playing. I mean, we will take people that have to have intense conversations with, you know, a boss, loved one, whatever. And we'll put them right into that moment and we'll turn up, they'll enact it 4 different ways. They'll do it where what's the absolute worst case scenario? Cool. Hit them with it. You know, their role playing partner. Now let's take what's the best case scenario. Now let's play with the middle ground because that chaos brings clarity. You know, for them, they're able to get real life perspective to those moments. And you think about it, we don't really have a way to rehearse or refine for real life and conversations. So to me, you know, I've never actively marketed that as like, oh, it's going to make you tough. Like we say it's going to make you more adaptable. But I would say that takes a certain amount of toughness to face that kind of ambiguity, wouldn't you? Or is it just physical?
No, 100%. The way I look at it is anything that can create that kind of uncertainty and that pull towards oh my gosh, I want to get out of this situation, like that is an opportunity for growth.